Hello, and welcome back to I Couldn't Throw It Out, the podcast where I tell the stories behind the treasures I've saved, and then we try to throw them out. For the final episode of Season 1, we share interviews with a very unlikely trio. First, there's Kevin Cronin. You may remember him as the lead singer of the classic rock group REO Speedwagon. Then there's Jean-Michel Basquiat, the art world star whose paintings now sell for huge amounts. And finally, Chuck Barris, the kooky creator of the dating game, the newlywed game, and the Gong Show. How did these mismatched people end up on one cassette tape? Keep listening to find out.
I couldn't throw it out. I had to scream and shout. Before I turn to dust, I've got to throw it out.
Hello, Sally Libby.
Hello, Michael Small.
We did it. We reached the last episode in Season 1 of our podcast, which we like to call I Couldn't Throw It Out.
Yay! We did do it!
Yes. And to celebrate, we got a new angle. Today, we're going totally rando.
Explanation, please. What are you talking about?
Well, people like me, who are at least 3 months younger than you, use the word rando to mean random.
So what's so random about this, other than the fact that you're too old to be using millennial speak?
Well, I know that your ancient mind wanders when I ramble. So let me remind you about Kiefer Sutherland. Remember him?
Yeah.
I discovered that the second side of my interview tape was not actually an interview with Kiefer Sutherland. I had taped over it in 1984 with 3 totally unrelated and random phone interviews.
Oh.
Yeah, all 3 of these were for the Chatter page. That was the celebrity column I wrote for several years on the last page of People magazine. For today, I just want to wallow in the randomness of the 3 people who ended up on the backside of my Kiefer Sutherland tape.
Oh, woohoo!
In those days, I was always waiting for celebrities of various types to return my calls. So when the phone rang, I had to attach my recorder to the phone very quickly with a little suction cup and get a cassette into the recorder pronto. Apparently, I was low on cassettes in 1984, and I didn't actually foresee that a 16-year-old Sutherland would become famous in my lifetime. So I just grabbed the cassette with his interview and I taped over it.
A little short-sighted, weren't we?
I still am nearsighted. Sally, gonna sound like a random question, but are you familiar with the rock band REO Speedwagon?
Oh, am I familiar with them?
Did you date them?
Almost. I was that close to the stage.
Okay, so now, if you had to choose between I'm Gonna Keep On Loving You and I Can't Fight This Feeling Anymore, which would you choose as the greatest REO Speedwagon song?
No, I wouldn't use the word greatest, but I would say I can't fight this feeling anymore.
I am so with you, partly because I believe in the deepest realms of my heart that if I had to crawl across the floor or come crashing through the door, I couldn't fight this feeling anymore. And furthermore, it's time to bring the ship into the shore and throw away the oars because I can't fight this feeling anymore.
I hear you.
That song was number 1 in 1982, and REO was still riding high when the lead singer, Kevin Cronin, called me in 1984. There was a very specific reason why I put in a request for him to call me. I had read that the band was sponsoring a 25-year-old speed skater named Eric Hendrickson for the Sarajevo Winter Olympics.
A rock band sponsored a skater? I thought that was more of a corporate thing.
It's unusual. That's why I wanted to ask him about it. Now, I know you do not remember office life very well because it was a long time ago, but send your mind back and you may recall that the workday is full of people who come along and make things more difficult for you. But Kevin Cronin was not one of those people. Basically, he did my job for me. All I had to do was answer the phone and turn on that tape recorder, and we were off to the races. I'm not going to play you the whole thing, but here's an excerpt that explains how a rock band became sponsors of a speed skater. It started when they were watching an interview with Hendrickson, maybe on Wide World of Sports or some other TV sports show. Now get ready because he had a lot to tell me. We're going to begin right now.
Something that's that people need support, and people need to believe in someone, and everyone needs someone to believe in them. And this just seemed like a kind of a natural thing for our band to do after all the kind of songs that we've written about, to keep pushing and to ride the storm out and roll with the changes, all those kind of, things that I write to uplift myself as well as other people. So this whole situation just seemed to make sense. So we just, we talked to him and found out what his needs were, and it turned out that if we just kind of, did one benefit show for him, that it could tide him over through the Olympics, and so that's what we did. And
where was the benefit show?
The benefit show was in Champaign, Illinois, which is our hometown. We did.
Oh, you're from Champaign also?
Yeah, exactly.
So did you know him?
No, he's much younger than us. Not much younger. He's maybe a year or two younger than us. But and that's what. Yeah, exactly. That's what made the kind of like the connection. So. How
much money did you raise for him?
I don't know exactly, but it was the proceeds from an entire show. So it was a fair amount. Champaign is our hometown, and it was a sold out show. So you can just. You can imagine that it was a good amount of money. He's just the kind of guy that I think no matter, I have a feeling he's going to win a gold medal just because, and if he doesn't, he sure deserves to. It'll be interesting. If he doesn't, then that'll really show how much these other athletes work, because this guy is just out there and he's just working his butt off. Actually, whether he wins or loses isn't really the point. It's just the point that it just feels good to be behind someone who's willing to work that hard.
They gave him the proceeds from an entire show? That must have made such a difference. But I have to admit, I don't remember Eric Henriksen.
I can think of one reason for that. He represented the U.S. 3 times at the Olympics, but he didn't bring home any medals. However, if he had to skate across the floor or come crashing through the door, I don't think you'd have to fight the feeling, because he was fast. He won at least 13 medals at other competitions. Now, before we move on, here's a rando question. Do you know what REO Speedwagon stands for?
Let's see. That would be Rapid Eye Optometry? Speedwagon? I have no clue.
I didn't know either. Since I have this little tidbit straight from the REO's mouth, I might as well share it with you.
What does REO Speedwagon mean?
What does REO Speedwagon mean? The name comes from a car that was, actually it was a motor car company it ends up being the Oldsmobile company, but REO stands for Ransom E. Olds, which is just the guy's name. Nothing interesting, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But the reason that the name stuck, the reason we picked it, is it was the first. The original REO Speedwagon was a fire truck, and it was one of the first fire trucks that, is when they finally realized you could get to a fire faster with a motor than you could with a bunch of horses. And so the REO Speedwagon was like, was the first fast-moving, high-energy kind of truck. And so it kind of fit our image as being, high energy and, and fast and, hot. So we kind of kept it.
That was actually kind of interesting.
He was a good talker, right?
Oh, yeah.
Definitely there was a lot of enthusiasm there.
Enthusiasm, yes.
And it was all very pleasant.
Pleasant.
My next interview on the tape involves a whole other type of art form. You would never in a million years associate this person with REO Speedwagon. But like it or not, he got associated on this tape just because, well, it's random. And he happened to get on the phone with me in 1984. This particular interview reminds me that many of the people I wrote about were not so famous when they talked to me. Like Kiefer Sutherland, right? But man, did they ever get famous later.
Mm-hmm.
The same is true for this young artist who was encouraged to talk to me by an acquaintance of mine who was named Andy. And yes, his last name was Warhol, Andy Warhol. Name drop.
I always wondered how you got to know Andy Warhol.
Oddly enough, we traveled in the same circles, at least for that phase of my life. When I was writing the Chatter column, I'd go to like 2 or 3 parties a night, and Andy loved to go to parties. We saw each other so often that we got to know each other.
Mm-mm.
Plus, he was a close friend of one of my friends from college. She told him I was okay, so he kind of trusted me.
What about this young artist? Who was it?
At the time, he was getting famous in art circles. Almost everyone agreed that he was very talented. And he was also an extremely cool guy. Like, he dated Madonna. His early paintings had elements of graffiti with words scrawled over images. They were selling for thousands of dollars, which seemed like a lot to me. A few months ago, one of his paintings called The Guilt of Gold Teeth sold in Hong Kong. It went for $42 million,
Ooh.
one painting.
Oh.
In 2017, one of his untitled paintings from 1982, which was before I spoke to him, that painting sold for $110 million. $110 million.
Oh.
Think about that amount.
Whoa.
Beyonce and Jay-Z own one of his paintings, which they bought for only $4.2 million. And the artist's name is Jean-Michel Basquiat. Andy had told me that Jean-Michel was in Hawaii and I'd be calling him there. So here's how we got started.
Are you in Hawaii on vacation or for painting or for both?
I'm just relaxing.
What are you looking forward to when you return to New York? Is something going to be happening?
Not much. I'm looking forward to staying here.
Oh, you're going to stay there a while?
Well, I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm just I'm not really looking forward to anything, really.
There was one important detail that I didn't know. Yesterday, when I read up on Jean-Michel, I found out that his trip to Hawaii was kind of rehab to get over his drug addiction. Now that I know that, I can see why my questions seem pretty ridiculous to him. Of course, at the time, I had no idea what this interview would mean in 2023 because, get this, Sally, right now on Broadway, there's a play called The Collaboration, and it's about the relationship between Jean-Michel and Andy Warhol.
Ah.
It's true. So even if I kind of messed up the interview, I'm glad that I can add at least a few of these small details to that tale.
Do you have a big project that you're working on now?
No.
Okay. Do you paint like almost every day or
Yeah,
more?
I paint or draw something every day.
Uh-huh. I was wondering if there are any stories. I don't know. Do you know Andy pretty well at this point? Because it will be sort of introduced as he thinks your stuff's really great. And is there any?
No, we're friends. We exercise together. Like when I'm in the city, I see him. 5 days a week.
Oh, I didn't.
For an hour or two around lunchtime.
Mm-hmm.
And then we do a couple push-ups and stuff, and then then I go to my studio and I work, and then he stays there and he works.
Mm-hmm.
We talk, gives me advice and stuff. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Have you ever painted anything together?
Not exactly. He doesn't paint, so not exactly.
Yeah, but you haven't worked on any projects together.
Yeah. We did one thing with Francesco Clemente, yeah, but it hasn't happened yet. But it's still in the making. Collaborative painting.
Where you would paint and he would do some photography, or?
I don't know. All three of us touch the canvas somewhere,
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But I think he's gonna package it. He's one who's gonna package it all.
Can you tell me the name of the other person again? I didn't get it.
Francesco Clemente. Never heard of him?
I haven't. I'm sorry. I probably should have.
He's more famous than me.
Well, that just goes to show.
He's Italian too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he's imported stuff.
I don't know if you can tell, Sally, but that was embarrassing. Admitting I didn't know who Francesco Clemente was. He was one of the most successful artists at the time. I did at least find out that Jean-Michel and Andy Warhol did push-ups after lunch, which was interesting. Interesting image. And when I asked him if he was making enough money to support himself from his art, he did kid around with me in a way that seems a little bit friendly.
Is your income mostly from your painting, or do you have another job?
I'm a gigolo. No. I don't know. No, mostly from paintings.
Okay.
I could say something. Well, I could say anything I want to say. What can I say there? How do I get my money? I find it.
By the end of the interview, everything I asked annoyed him. And when I offered him a chance to say whatever he wanted, that annoyed him too. It's a little painful to hear, but why not? Here it is.
If there's anything at all you want to say about your art, this is the chance to do it. I really wish you would take advantage of the chance to say something. Cause,
I said it. You didn't hear it?
I did hear it, but I'm just giving you like a final summation time, if you have anything more you want to say.
Oh, well, if you just put in that thing about Star Eyes, that's it. Did you get that down?
I hope so. I'm trying to write fast.
Like when you have a jet, it's like, let's say the song is the object, right?
Mm-hmm.
or the object is the song to the painter, right? And it's just his execution of that song or that object. Now, anytime somebody plays that song, it's gonna be heard a different way, but it's still recognizable as Star Eyes, right?
Right.
So it's all variation on. There's only a couple of themes. You know what I mean? All this talk about all this other stuff is bullshit. It's just there's only a couple of things you can paint, and it's the way you do it. You know? And that's. And I can't really describe the way I do it. You know, I just go ahead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's all I want to say.
Okay. Well, thanks for taking the time to speak with me. And
Sure.
I appreciate it.
What is Star Eyes?
Well, I had no idea at the time, so I looked it up. It was a song from a movie in 1943 called I Dood It. I Dood It. It was directed by Liza Minnelli's father, Vincent Minnelli.
I Dood It? Pretty odd.
Yeah, the movie may have been lost, but in 1951, Charlie Parker recorded the song, and then it became kind of a jazz standard.
Oh.
If anyone wants to hear what was inspiring Jean-Michel Basquiat, I'll put a link to the Charlie Parker version on our website, throwitoutpodcast.com. I did see Jean-Michel once more after that when we were both at a party at the area nightclub, and I decided, based on his reaction to me on the phone, not to remind him that I was the person who did a phone interview with him.
You know what your biggest mistake was? You didn't take every penny you had to buy his cheapest paintings.
You are so right. I could have retired long ago. Just another case of woulda, coulda, shoulda. But I just couldn't see into the future. One of the things that I never would have predicted was that Jean-Michel Basquiat died in 1988 from a drug overdose.
So he was only 28 when he passed.
Actually, he was only 27.
Oh.
And think of what he would have done if he had survived. And that's really a great tragedy. But when I crossed paths with him, I was so busy that I never stopped long enough to think about where he was going, what his importance was, or to really study his art as much as it deserved. My inability to see what was coming was particularly true with the next interview that ended up on the Kiefer tape. Once again, it was so random. Someone who couldn't have been farther from REO Speedwagon and Jean-Michel Basquiat, but it was someone who was particularly entertaining. Of all the people I interviewed, this was one of the smartest and most wonderful bullshitters. His name was Chuck Barris. Does that name ring a bell?
Chuck Barris, yes!
Do you remember what he's known for?
I sure do. The Gong Show.
Which was?
It was a talent show that had people on that were just awful.
And that was the joy of it.
Yes. I mean, it was like, that show was like a horrible car wreck that you absolutely couldn't help but look at. I mean, this guy was so crazy, and you loved to hate him, but there was also something a little bit likable about him.
Sure. Now, here's another test. Do you remember what other TV shows are affiliated with Chuck Barris?
Chuck Barris? No, I don't.
Well, he was creator of The Dating Game and The Newlywed Game.
Figures.
And even if people don't remember those shows, they were extremely popular, and they were kind of like early versions, I would say, of The Bachelor and Family Feud.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, just on the side, he wrote the song Palisades Park,
Oh, yeah.
which got to be number 3 on the Billboard chart in 1962.
Whee! Down at Palisades Park.
There you go. But of all the kooky things he did, the kookiest was his book called Confessions of a Dangerous Mind.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see the George Clooney movie based on that book?
No, but now that you mention it, I want to see it.
It was great. And one of my favorite actors of all time, Sam Rockwell, played Chuck Barris, and he was amazing. But the book was written long before the movie came out in 2002. In fact, no surprise, it was published in 1984, which is exactly why Chuck Barris ended up on the same tape. This was a crazy interview because the book was about a character like Chuck Barris, who supposedly was a CIA operative and hitman on the side while he was running game shows.
Oh.
And he claimed that he couldn't confirm any of it for me because it was off limits. It was all secret. So we have this extremely absurd conversation where I keep going back to the same question and he keeps not answering. So here we go.
I'm trying to figure out whether you are actually saying I was there at the Civil Rights March for the CIA.
Again, there's a lot of things I'd like to talk about, and a lot of things I'd like not to talk about, and it blurs for me. So I'm telling you, Michael, I just don't want to. I don't think it really does me or the book any good to mention certain things. Other things I think it does. So I'll have to be evasive in that respect.
I understand your evasiveness. What I'm trying to figure out is, in reading the book,
did you like it?
I found it very entertaining.
That's all I care about. If you found it entertaining, I'm a happy cat. I mean, if I gave you a few hours of entertainment, I figure the book served its purpose. It really did. I just feel that's the best thing that's happened so far this morning.
Well,
to hear that you got a little had some fun out of it.
Nonetheless, even though I got a lot of fun out of it, the column that this is for is sort of a newsy type column.
Right.
And so I want to understand that you were involved in domestic CIA activities.
I can't comment on that, Michael.
So, in fact, the book could be fiction. It is being marketed as nonfiction, but in fact, the book could be fiction.
Well, I don't know how the book could be fiction if...
Because if you can't comment on whether the book is true or
not... if I can't comment on whether the book is nonfiction, I can equally not comment on... If I couldn't comment on whether the book is fiction, does that automatically make it nonfiction? I mean, I don't understand.
So you just won't say whether the book is fiction or nonfiction?
Exactly. I actually just won't say much. Probably going to be a very poor interview.
Do you expect people to be skeptical about...
Of course. I just think they've got to be. I mean, I believe it's a mind-boggling situation.
See, if you wanted the book just read as entertainment, whether it was true or not, you would have just sold it as fiction, and it would have been a novel.
Exactly, but I don't believe it is, in that respect, a novel. And I think it not being a novel in that respect, the respect being there's a lot of truth in the book, makes it that more interesting to the reader. And if that makes it more entertaining to the reader, that's important to me.
Do you believe him? Do you think he was in the CIA and that he was a hitman?
I do not.
You don't? Interesting.
No, I think he's full of it. But, it could be a very entertaining book, so believe what you will.
Yeah, and you got to see that movie. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. He died in 2017. He was 87.
Oh.
I'm glad I got to see what a fun person he was.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it meant that I couldn't share all my Kiefer Sutherland interview with you because we were listening to him talk about that book.
Mm.
But this brings us to the key moment. You've heard the whole tape, Sally, with Kiefer Sutherland on one side, and on side two, the Rando Trio, Kevin Cronin, Jean-Michel Basquiat, and Chuck Barris. Are you going to try to tell me that this artifact of 1984 should go in the trash?
Mike, it either definitely should go in the trash or it should definitely be saved. I just can't figure out which one. It's so odd, and it might keep you, entertained for a few more years.
I did digitize the full interviews, but I feel like this tape right here, this is special.
Put it in the middle file, the one where you're going to think about it.
Okay, that's all we got from today is we were just listening to the tape. So there it is. But I'm afraid it's that time again.
What time?
Time for me to go crawling to the door and crashing through the floor because I can't fight the feeling anymore that our first season is done. I guess we'll take a break before season 2, before we return with more mounds of treasures that I've saved.
But before that, I have a few last questions.
Oh.
Like, can you remind me how much you've thrown out so far?
Oh, that's such a mean question. Okay, let's try to review. We certainly didn't throw out anything relating to Joni. And I did throw out that greeting card. I shredded that greeting card for you in the very first episode. That
yes,
you sent
I
me.
remember that.
We threw out some cards after the kidney transplant. Mm-hmm. And I threw out that mixtape from Cindy. I still have the clang of the trash can in my ear, that painful clang. No more mixtape from Cindy. It's gone. It is gone. I've got 24 boxes of this stuff, and all that's gone is like about 1/4 of an inch.
So,
worth.
Mike, would it be correct to call this experiment a failure?
No. I mean, for me, so many memories came back to me that I had completely lost. And thinking about what I did during these years of my career and high school and how it all came together, let me toss this back at you. Did anything come out in this podcast that was valuable to you?
It puts your life in kind of perspective, and it feels like you're living twice when you're busy and living your life and it's all hectic. But then when you go back and you have all these mementos, then you process things and you really sort of put this picture together of your life. I think it's kind of cool.
It's not accidental that you're my friend all these years. I am so glad you said that because I agree with that. Everybody says, well, at least with the tapes, that I should digitize them and toss them. But I don't trust that, and I have a very good reason.
Why is that?
Well, back in, I don't know, it must have been 1994, I helped to create one of the very first websites, which was for Wired Magazine. They promised us it would be there for eternity. I did interviews with Laurie Anderson, Yoko Ono, and I didn't save any of it because I believed in eternity, but eternity didn't even last a decade. Now all that content is gone for good, disappeared forever. So that's why I'm not a big believer in digital files. I think these three-dimensional objects are much more reliable.
But you promised that you'd get everything out of Nancy's garage, so she and Cindy wouldn't be stuck with it if you die ahead of schedule.
I just met with a financial advisor. We're planning for retirement, and he had on his chart, it said, end of plan for Michael and end of plan for Cindy.
Oh, that sounds so final.
Well, yeah, end of plan means you die.
Yeah.
So, thinking ahead to my end of plan, I created a new box called Processed. And everything that we didn't throw out this season went into that box. If I happen to reach my hour of doom before you and Cindy and the very famous Nancy, the three of you can certainly throw out that box first because at least it's been processed. And then the rest of it, I leave it on your conscience. Do what you have to do. However, I do believe that it's highly likely that both you and I will make it to season 2.
Any thoughts about what you'll try to toss in the next season?
During the past few months, I think both of us have heard from people who told us about their own treasures that they saved. I was thinking we'd do some episodes hearing from other people, telling their stories and trying to throw out their things.
Mm-hmm. See if they have any more luck.
Yeah, exactly. And I have so much stuff in these boxes.
And you need to step up and get throwing.
I think that it will be time to toss a few more things before you hear me say what word, Sally?
I couldn't throw it out.
I couldn't throw it out. I had to scream and shout before I...
Please remember, if you enjoyed this season, go to Apple Podcasts and give us a positive review. Or tell a friend about it. Or follow us at Instagram at Throw It Out Pod, or see all our links, photos, and more info about each episode at throwitoutpodcast.com.
And while we're at it, many thanks to the key people who made this season possible. Got to start with the very famous Nancy, who is storing all my stuff, Cindy Ruskin, for a million reasons, Ed Hernstadt for advice and guidance. Also, a very special thanks to Boots Camp, Jen Ayers, and Don Ralph, who gave us such an excellent theme song. And last of all, infinite thanks to all the friends who encouraged us. We are so grateful to every one of you. And now, I gotta go sort through some boxes. Bye, Sal.
Bye, Mike. See you season 2.
Out here in Nancy's, her big garage. This isn't a mirage. Decades of stories, memories stacked. There is a redolence of some irrelevant facts. Oh, I couldn't throw it out. I had to scream and shout. It all seems so unjust, but still I know I must. Before I turn to dust, I've got to throw it out. Before I turn to dust, I've got to throw it out. Hoarding my possessions in these painful sessions. I guess this is what it's about. The poems, cards, and papers, the moldy, musty vapors.